point, I have the pleasure to welcome the President of the European Council, António Costa, and the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. They will brief us about the G7 summit that will start tomorrow here in Kananaskis. After that, we'll take a few questions, and let me give the floor first to the President of the European Council.
Well, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here in Kananaskis, and let me begin by extending thanks to Canada and Prime Minister Mark Carney for hosting this summit. I also want to express our solidarity with Canada regarding the devastating wildfires affecting the country in the last days. These fires remind us of the urgent need to protect our environment and to fight climate change. This is an issue we will address during our meeting. This G7 summit takes place at a critical moment. We face uncertainty in the global economy and an increasing number of conflicts across the world. We witness continued Russian aggression against Ukraine. We confront a devastating humanitarian crisis in Gaza with urgent needs growing by the day, and we now also grapple with conflict between Israel and Iran. At the same time, we also face risks to economic growth, risks fueled by policy uncertainty and trade disputes. Against this backdrop, the G7 carries an important responsibility. The G7 must lead with unity and purpose. On the economic front, global imbalances remain a shared concern among G7 members, and we are committed to addressing them without sacrificing free and fair trade, which has delivered prosperity to our countries and lifted millions out of poverty over the years. We must act to overcome trade tensions, encourage investment, and foster sustainable growth. It's our duty and it's our obligation. The role of the G7 is also essential, addressing the main geopolitical challenges. We must step up our efforts in the Middle East. Iran must not be allowed to develop nuclear weapons. This issue should be addressed by diplomatic means. This is the time, now is time to give space for diplomacy and to give opportunity to decrease the escalation between Israel and Iran. Furthermore, we cannot forget that it is urgent to guarantee access for humanitarian aid to Gaza, to have an immediate ceasefire and the unconditional release of the remaining hostage. Finally, we must stay the course in our collective resolve to support Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, supporting United States-led peace efforts and ensuring they have the best chance of success, shaping the conditions for lasting peace, including long-term security guarantees, continuing to provide military and financial support to Ukraine, empowering its defense, deterring future aggression, and enabling swift reconstruction, and increasing pressure on Russia by imposing additional sanctions to cripple its ability to wage war and pressing for an unconditional ceasefire. The G7 plays an essential role in coordinating global diplomatic and economic efforts. I hope that the frank and open discussions we will have here in Kananaskis under the skilled chairmanship of the Prime Minister Carney will enable the G7 to fulfill its role to restore stability, to show the way to lasting peace and economic growth. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening. Let me begin also by thanking Prime Minister Carney and the Canadian Presidency for the very warm welcome. And let me join all those who express their solidarity with Canada fighting the devastating wildfires. Kananaskis is indeed a stunning place, a place with a history. In 2002, the G7 met here as the G8. Russia was still at the table and was seemingly seeking closer ties with the West. What we saw then as a chance for peace turned out, as we all know, to be a vast illusion. 2 decades later, the world stands at an inflection point. We're confronted with wars we thought were consigned to history, and the global landscape is increasingly shaped by global competition. This is why this summit will be defined by geoeconomics and geopolitics at the same time. The world's largest democracies and largest industrial economies are gathered here today, willing to talk and talk openly together, ready to act decisively together. And I would like to focus tonight on 4 key priorities that I see for Europe. The first is, we're here to address the profound uncertainty and volatility of the global economy, which has already weathered 2 decades of shocks. We all recall the financial crisis, be it the global one or the one in the Eurozone. We recall the post-pandemic inflation and, of course, the Russia-induced energy crisis. Today, trade tensions persist. The risks are no longer abstract. They are material and mounting. When companies are unsure what conditions they'll face tomorrow, they delay investment today. When households expect price hikes, they stop spending. So we need a frank discussion among the G7 partners, restoring a sense of stability and predictability among ourselves. That is the first priority. We are so deeply connected, which means also that risks must be managed together, because tariffs, for example, don't just impact exporters. They are like taxes paid by families and businesses in importing countries. So let us keep trade between us fair, predictable and open. All of us need to avoid protectionist measures. This is an important message that the G7 can send to the markets and to the world. And let us stay focused together on the real and the structural challenges that demand our entire attention. And this brings me to my second point, economic security. It is a challenge we all have a crucial stake in, because all G7 countries are facing aggressive trade practices from non-market economies, from industrial overcapacity to weaponizing economic dependencies. These practices must be addressed. And because they affect all of us, we must respond together and bring an end to the era of globalism without guardrails. So, we must diversify and strengthen our supply chains and raw materials. To this end, we will discuss closer cooperation on critical minerals among trusted partners. We must tackle distortions in other key sectors, steel, for example, or pharmaceutical products, and we must counter together non-market policies and practices. This will also be an important discussion of tomorrow. My third point, moving from the geoeconomics to the geopolitics, we will start with the topic of Ukraine. President Zelensky will be joining us tomorrow, actually the day after tomorrow. He has shown the willingness to agree to an unconditional ceasefire. President Putin, on the other hand, has escalated attacks on Ukraine. To achieve peace through strength, we must put more pressure on Russia to secure a real ceasefire, to bring Russia to the negotiating table, and to end this war. Sanctions are critical to that end. As a result of the G7 and EU sanctions combined, for example, Russian oil and gas revenues have fallen by almost 80% since the beginning of the war. So the sanctions are working. And we will do more. Last week, we put forward a proposal for an 18th sanctions package. I will invite all G7 partners to join us in this endeavour. And Europe is committed to putting Ukraine in a position of strength. So far, as we all know, the European Union and its member states have mobilized almost 150 billion euros for Ukraine. And as G7, we must plan now for more support for 2026 and beyond. My fourth point, we will have a discussion on the Middle East. We're following with deep concern the situation, following Israel's strikes on Iran and the Iranian response. I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu today. I reiterated Europe's commitment to peace and stability in the Middle East. In this context, Israel has the right to defend itself. Iran is the principal source of regional instability, and we've always been very clear. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. We have voiced our strong concerns over Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile program. A diplomatic solution remains the best way in the long run to address concerns about Iran's nuclear program. And Europe remains committed to finding a lasting solution through a negotiated deal. For this, we are ready to work with partners in the region and beyond. We will also stay very vigilant what the implications for the international energy markets is concerned. As I discussed with President Trump yesterday, we are ready to coordinate among the like-minded partners to safeguard market stability, specifically the energy market stability. And finally, the recent events have underlined the increasing interlinkages between the conflicts in Europe on one hand and the Middle East on the other hand. Today, the same type of Iranian-designed and made drones and ballistic missiles are indiscriminately hitting cities in Ukraine and in Israel. As such, these threats need to be addressed together. My final point is on maintaining the strength of the G7. Almost 50 years on, the G7 has proven its worth as a global leadership forum. Its relevance over the next 50 years will depend on our ability to both stay united and remain attractive. This year, we are joined by Brazil, India, South Africa, South Korea, Australia, and Mexico. Europe already has strong ties with each of them. We are, and we will remain, firm believers in democracy, in openness, and outreach. To conclude, let me go back to 2002 for a second. Yes, the world was different. The G7, then G8, was different. And the European Union itself was different. Back then, we were expanding from within, but less focused on our geopolitical clout. 2 decades on, today, Europe fully plays its role on the international stage, ready to shape what comes next with our closest partners. Thank you so much.
Floor to, I'll start with, sir, here.
community. Sean Tandon with AFP. Could I follow up on your conversations on the Middle East? You mentioned your call today with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and you talked about how a diplomatic solution is necessary. Was that a message that you made to Prime Minister Netanyahu? Do you believe the diplomatic solution is now preferable to the military conflict? Was there a call for an end to the violence? And do you think the G7 here has a message that could potentially send toward ending the conflict? Thanks.
So, of course it will be a topic at G7 without any question, and we'll discuss it. We should keep in mind that just this week the International Atomic Energy Agency issued a resolution denouncing Iran's breach. And as I've said in the introductory remarks, Iran should never acquire nuclear weapons. So in the call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, he described the situation. We were both, of course, aligned in the fact that Iran should not have nuclear weapons without any question. Of course, I think a negotiated solution is, in the long term, the best solution. So we discussed the topics, and as we discussed, of course, also the Prime Minister described to me the theater itself and how the development is very important. In the same phone call, I insisted and urged that humanitarian aid that is not reaching Gaza has to go into Gaza. He promised that this is the case and that this will be the case. So I will be working, coming back home from G7, on having a close look at the facts, where our humanitarian aid is, how it reaches Gaza, whether it gets into Gaza, what we can do to make sure that humanitarian aid reaches the people in Gaza.
I'll take. Sorry. Yeah.
Hi, Julio Rivas, Agencia F. This is a complex summit. There are many differences, or important differences, especially with the United States. Do you think that this is a summit, a controlled damage summit, or something that you can build out something that you can continue it in the next European and Canada summit?
Well, we are allies, we are partners, and we are friends of the United States. And between partners, allies, and friends, when some problem comes, what we need is to talk. And we are here in this very crucial moment to talk, not only with the United States, but also with the other partners. And of course, Canada is a key partner in our transatlantic alliance. And we are looking forward with great interest for the upcoming summit between the European Union and Canada that we will be hosting in 2 weeks in Brussels.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. So we will be stepping up our today already very, very close relationship with Canada. So I'm very much looking forward. We will have important topics to discuss: the economic situation, the geopolitical situation. I want to emphasize here that this is also a moment where we can strengthen Canada's role in Europe's rapidly evolving defense architecture. We have started to discuss how we can get even closer in building up our defense architecture. And you know that we have the program SAFE. It's the 150 billion euros for member states for joint procurement of military equipment. And there is a possibility for very close allies, friends and partners to join. And here Canada and the European Union are working together to develop and sign then at the summit the Security and Defence Partnership. The Security and Defence Partnership will basically open the door for joint talks with Canada on their access to our SAFE program. So we have not only the economic topics that we will be discussing here, not only the geopolitics, but also defense will play an important role.
Thank you. We have time for one last question. Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Ole Ryborg from Danish National Radio and Television. A question of trade. When I look at the number of countries going to the G7, here there's around a dozen countries who all look forward to meeting the US President Trump to discuss their issues on trade. Even the UK Prime Minister, who had a deal on trade, apparently still needs to talk to Trump about that. Are you going to meet Trump and discuss trade during the summit, and what do you expect from that? Yeah. And additionally, on the question on trade, we see more and more how the US President links the question of security and the US willingness to help Europe in the area of security to economic issues, not only trade but also economic issues. Are you worried in that area, or should we just be calm when it comes to this link between economic issues and security? Thank you.
Well, we are always calm when it's about to talk with a friend, with a ally, and with a partner. Of course, the main issue between Europe and the United States is precisely about the European defense. And we should focus on this main issue. As we know, the United States have now a new geopolitical priority, and this means that the United States want to rebalance the burden sharing of European defense. And from the Europe point of view, this is also we are going in the same direction. In March 2022, we decided that we need to assume greater responsibility on our own defense. Over the last 3 years, the military spending in Europe rising by 30%. And we are committed to continue to do this. All member states, and also with the support of the European Union, and especially with this instrument proposed by the Commission. Then, what we need to talk with the United States is how we can assume greater responsibility with only one red line. We need to protect and preserve the deterrence relevance of Article 5 of NATO Treaty. But because this is the main issue, we should avoid to introduce other issues that undermine our economic capacity to assume greater responsibility on our own defense. That's why this is not the right moment to create uncertainty on economics. It's not the right moment to create problems on trade, because we need to strengthen our economic basis. The United States need also to strengthen their economic basis, and we are talking about the most relevant trade relation in the world. Then we need to protect this, to focus on what is the most important, is to have a good agreement between Europe and the United States about burden sharing on defense.
And that builds a perfect bridge to the trade here. Indeed, thank you. As you know, we are fully engaged in the trade negotiations right now. And I was always very clear, and I want to reiterate it here, that I absolutely prefer negotiated solutions for exactly the reasons the President Costa was just mentioning. So you also know that I agreed with President Trump that we want to find a common solution till the 9th of July. We are also working on lowering the trade barriers. This was the reason why we offered 0 for 0, so 0 tariffs for all industrial goods on both sides. This should be over time the goal, but we are amidst the negotiations right now. It stays as we have started at the beginning. We want a negotiated solution, but in case that we do not find a satisfactory result, we are preparing or consulting right now the rebalancing list you're familiar with, and we're taking, at the moment, being on board the comments of all the stakeholders. So all the instruments are on the table, but we're deep now in the detailed negotiations of our trade agreements.
That's it for today. Thank you very much for attending this press conference. Have a good evening.